Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Divine Feminine Healers podcast. I'm overjoyed to have the lovely, the beautiful, the honorable Katie Silcox back on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here, Katie.
Well, I'm always happy to be here. Thank you.
So, a question that I've been asking all of my guests, given the name of the podcast, is how do you connect with the divine feminine, or how does she express herself specifically through you?
Hmm. Yeah, once things start to sort of take off as buzzwords, I find that they lose their meaning more and more. And so I think that your question is really important because we all sort of have an intuitive understanding of the divine feminine, but I think there are a lot of different ideas around what it is. And maybe one of the things that we can start with is the fact that maybe it can't be defined.
Hmm.
And so we'll do our best, right? And so what I think is super important to start with is this idea of the feminine as being a capacity of all things
Hmm.
and all beings. And the way it's showing up as I continue to hopefully evolve and not devolve my own heart and consciousness is my ability to be in my body, which is something we could look at deeper. What does that even mean? And then my ability to open my heart and my ability to receive and my ability to allow. And that is the exact opposite of what I was taught was my job as a little girl and as a woman in the world that we live in, which is that my worth and my value come from my ability to do things for other people and prove my beauty and value and work really, really, really hard to attain, achieve, and not that those are bad things at all, not at all, but it's really one side of the coin. And so in my own practice, working with the divine feminine is about sitting down and putting my hand on my heart and working with my body. And when I say body, I don't really mean my physical body. I mean my subtle energy, which lives in my body. So I want to take good care of my physical body. But I think this whole idea of embodiment as divine feminine pathway is really important and really true. But there can be a lot of confusion in our culture right now, that the culture you and I live in, around embodiment and what that is. Because if we're only connected to our bodies, we're screwed, right? Because our bodies feel things all the time and we can interpret them in a number of different ways. Some days our bodies feel good, other days there's pain. And there's this false idea that we should be having this sort of delectable, orgasmic experience when we're in our physical body. And that's just bullshit, right? Like the whole point of the divine feminine is knowing the part of you that is forever and energetic and enduring and prana, right? And so to conclude that really long-winded answer, for me, it's about stopping the momentum of my thinking and worrying and just asking that energetic presence to be with me and then waiting and pausing enough to receive it. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of practice and a lot of patience, but it's the essence of meditation.
Hmm. I love that so much. And I think it's so important to bring up that point that we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into boxes, and these labels can serve a purpose. And then it's like the doshas, like you kind of float and you can let them go when don't have that meaning anymore. It's really important to hold both and I love that you came down to it's really just that essence and your own unique connection to spirit. I actually just had Dr. Claudia Welch on the podcast, and she had a very similar answer. So I love that, how that aligns. And you brought embodiment up, which is really important too, because I think, again, holding both and. Again, we live in this culture that is so obsessed with the body and so like physical workouts and everything. But then to the other extent, we could live in the opposite way where we're just totally out of our bodies and disconnected and disassociated with, even we can do that with anything, even spiritual practices. So I would love to hear, like, when was that kind of tipping point where you started to realize you really wanted to bring that truest essence of embodiment to Ayurveda, and maybe felt like, I often, and you had, last time we were on the podcast, you talked about the opposite, how we get into this world is through pain and suffering. And so I'm assuming, but I don't want to assume, I want to ask your experience. There had been a disconnection from body. That was the antithesis in order for you to reconnect and embody with Ayurveda. So I'd love to hear what that transition was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Dissociation on a large scale can just be the simple way in which many of us, live a lot of our time in a false reality called our thoughts. I mean, that's what dissociation is. It's, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in my feelings. I don't want to be in this room. This is boring. I want to go somewhere else into the future, or I'm going to like, watch the way my mind kind of goes back into past things and perceptions and fears and seductions, as Claudia would call it, who I love. And so disassociation on a large scale, and of course there are more acute ways we can think of dissociation, but on a really subtle scale, all of us are dissociating every time we use Instagram. Every time we watch ourselves move into a mental movie about the future that we fear, that's a form of dissociation, but it can be even more subtle. And that is something I'm exploring now in my own mind, which is thoughts and even beautiful cognitive processes can often be a way that I'm running from the direct experience. That's the divine feminine. The divine feminine is raw. It's exactly what's occurring in this moment, right? And so whether that be really hard to experience and there's discomfort, or really amazing and there's pleasure and bliss, both of those can, at least for me, make me want to slip off, right? You have to train your capacity to notice and be with discomfort and notice and be with bliss without getting caught in either of them. And there's a reason this path is called the razor's edge. It is honing that mental instrument to be able to walk that line really, really finely. And I think if you're really practicing, it's super humbling.
Yeah, I love that. I think that I would love to hear more, like, what does it, because I think for our listeners, they're very like practical and like, what does that look like? How do you connect back to body so that you are getting away from the mind and truly connecting to like the feeling and the sensations?
Well, first I would say step one, release the idea that you're getting away from anything. That is a core practice for me right now. It's like I want so badly, a part of me wants so badly to like be in this better place. And I think that's a really human longing, right? That we can love and honor. It's very natural that we want to be comfortable, we want to be loved, we want to be soothed, we want to feel good, we want to be healthy, we want somebody to hold us and look in our eyes and tell us that we're adorable little creatures. But that is a very childlike longing, right? And so I can love that. And I saw you smile because you're like, yeah, I totally know what you mean, right? And like all your listeners are like, yeah, hell yeah, I want all of those things. And that's Tantra. It's like, yeah, you're normal. That's a human thing. But what doesn't get as much press about Tantra is that while you grow your appreciation and your recognition and your exploration and your presence with all the beauty and wonder and success and joy and orgasms of life, that simultaneously you grow your capacity to actually not be bothered either way, having it or not. And so for me, what that looks like practically is getting away from the idea that I am getting somewhere. And I know that sounds very Zen, but it really is. It's like I am starting to see that probably through the rest of my life, I will probably always have kind of kooky and neurotic thoughts. And I'm probably always going to have some level of inflammation in my body, right? Or I'm always going to have like little hurts and aches and pains, physical, emotional, mental, whatever. And like that the real freedom and the actual embodiment is to be able to sense the bodies that aren't the physical, right? You have an energy body. And like that's a body we work with, as you know, a lot in the Shakti School, because that pranamaya kosha, that energy body, A, is the divine feminine, and B, doesn't die. and C is the realm of the unconditional. So the mind is the realm of the conditional. And usually, when I say mind, I mean our thinking, conscious mind. That's the realm of the conditional, usually connected to our ego. And nothing wrong with an ego, but ego super limited based on our past experiences and our parents and our culture, right? No thanks. Body, temporary, really great. We love you. We want to care for you. That's why I created a whole Ayurveda school. But everybody gonna die, right? Nobody's getting out alive. And as you age, it's shrinking and drying. So why would I invest my time in being identified with my thinking and being identified with my body and obsessive over my body when I can go to a place that's been called the portal or the gateway between me and the soul? That's this energy field. So practically what that looks like for me, it is so darn simple. I just sit down. I did it before we got on the call. Whenever I have a little 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute, 2-minute, I just get there and then I bring my awareness different places. So in your chakra system, you have a third eye here, you have your heart, and you have your womb. If you're a woman, if you're a man, you have your lower bits. It doesn't really even matter where they are, right? And so the lower sexual organs, the heart, and the third eye are all receptive chakras. Our culture wants us to live in the expressive chakras, which is everything out. And so we have an inverted culture that takes our third eye, and what do? We project it out onto computer screens. What do we do with our hearts? A lot of us give out more love than we take in. We do more than we take in, especially for women. And our sexual organs, which especially for the womb, is an organ of receiving that which is worthy of being there, right? And so instead of doing that, we project that outward. And there's nothing wrong with projecting outward, but a better place to project outward from is your throat. It makes sense, right? Or your hara, your belly. And so because I know of that tendency in myself also, I'll sit down, I just put my hand on my heart, and I literally invite energy, aka spirit, God, my higher self, please come and be with me. Envelop me and teach me how to be with me. And then, really gently, without forcing it, I move my attention from the front of my body through my heart or through my third eye or through my kidneys to the back of the room, as far as I can imagine, or the back of my spine. And like even just talking about that, we can start to feel there's this softening of the way my voice even sounds to you, right? There's this total femininity that comes online that's like, oh, now I'm bathing in a milk that feels really nice, right? That's called universal prana, that's always available. And now I can meet with you and you can feel it like I'm with you, but I don't need you. I'm full. And so because I suck at this, I have to work so hard at this. I've really made it a strong practice for me in the sense that I'm not naturally receptive. You know, I'm naturally a doer. And I think a lot of women who listen to you might resonate with that.
Oh yeah. We got them all. I was just I love this connection you're bringing between the sacral and the throat because it's like the opposite, right? It's like, and I I went to a shaman one time. She had like a really funny image of me, like I was at a time when I was really burnt out. She's like, I see you just having all this fire in your sacral chakra, and you're throwing these fireballs at like everyone. And so that image came to mind because I think a lot of the women that I work with and a lot of the women that you have in your community, it's similar. It's like we know how to give away our energy, we know how to give more than we're receiving, and then when it comes to actually like expressing our needs, it's like blocked. It's like we don't even know how to do that or how to communicate that. So what have you discovered else about this unique connection between the womb and the throat chakra?
Hmm. Well, I think if you take 2 points in time and space, you can relate them in a number of ways, right? And so there's always this interplay going on between any of the chakras, and it really is a kind of an individual experience. But with receiving, which we could think of that sacral chakra more as a receptive center, when we are in a practice of being able to tune to our subtle energy and work with exploring parts of our subtle anatomy that we may not have been aware of before. Like, I mean, your listeners, we can just feel, well, what if I took my mind through my lower belly and found my kidneys and then moved it to my booty and to the back wall? You know, like, what if I just started to do that for like 90 seconds or 2 minutes or 20 minutes? Like, eventually you would start to feel there is a pathway of prana, there is a pathway of energy, and you can think of it like a magnet. It starts to have a life force of its own. So now I don't have to do that focusing. I just feel there's a river there, and oh wow, now the river's teaching me. I'm not, initially you're kind of coaxing it, right? But then the river has a life of its own, and I can actually perceive reality from that place. Then I receive stuff based on what it's pulling in to my flow. It's not about expecting somebody to give me something because I've been this great person, or you know what I mean? I think there's this idea of like, I'm giving so much more love than I'm getting, so you motherfuckers need to clean the kitchen, you know? And it's like, yeah, okay, but like, no, that's not really it. Like, you know, we have to unfortunately let go of this idea that anyone is ever maybe going to clean the kitchen or give us shit. You know, it's like that's actually a manipulative form of using our sexual energy. And so when we talk about the throat being this place of, obviously on a lower, quote, lower level, this is about expressing our ourselves, but on a higher level, the throat is the interface from of your heart and God. And that when the throat is really, really open, we are a voice for the divine.
Mm.
And so, how this is so related to the womb is that our creativity is an aspect of our divinity.
Mm.
And if we haven't spent a little bit of time moving our awareness through that part of our body, working with some of our issues around our sexuality and our attachment issues and our relationship issues and our parents, and you know, in the tantric system, the second chakra is everything you're still attached to, right? And there's nothing wrong with being healthily attached, but from a spiritual perspective, spirit, by the way, is different than your psychotherapist. They're not supposed to teach you the same things, although sometimes they do. So this realm of creativity becomes more fluid and more open the less you're actually waiting on the outside world to form this primary bond of bliss for you. And that's been really hard for me to, and still is sometimes. Like, it's a fundamental awakening of the inherent creativity inside of you that's completely disconnected from whether or not, you know, people are giving you what you want.
Mm. I think that's a great reminder, and something we all need to remember is like, you know, especially when you're in a relation with someone, it's constantly, you know, you can blame the other person or, yeah, just put them to a fault, but it's really, where am I in that relationship with myself and the divine? How can I really start to expand this relationship? This is the most important. There's something there that needs to be healed that's being reflected in this relationship. And I love that, giving back the responsibility to self. And then I'm curious because I'm hearing my listeners behind saying, well, you know, I'm doing all this, like, you know, self-care work. Like, I'm filling my cup. I got my dinacharya. I'm doing all the things, and I am building this relationship, but I'm seeing that this relationship is really not mirroring back to me what I need and what I'm wanting here. So where do we go from there then?
So when you say this relationship, you're referring to like somebody you're involved with in the world, right? Like your romantic partner. This is a, when we're getting close to powerful awakenings and energies that can awaken, it can oftentimes feel like a paradox or a double-edged sword or caught between a rock and a hard place. And the Buddhists call this fundamental groundlessness. And so that's a really good place to start, right? Like, okay, what if what if our partners weren't the holy grail that we are waiting for? And at the same time, we have to be we have to be in the world and make decisions that are coming from an adult place. And so for my own self, when I'm working through the energies of the relational realm, I know that this is nuclear energy.
Mm.
That's why it's called Kundalini, right? It's like you start touching people's body parts, guys out there listening, when we start being sexual with one another, neither good nor bad, it's just nuclear energy. And Kundalini, right? What was asleep in us starts to move and wake up. And if we're paying attention, we can use it to come closer to God. But most of the time we're like, no way, I do not want to see this shit. Push it back down. And what's the first way we get it to push it back down? Hey, you out there, you're the problem. You need to be doing X, Y, and Z so I don't have to feel this Kundalini awakening that's happening for me.
Mm.
Right? So you need to change. So for me, oh my Lord, I bow before the feet of many a horrible ex-boyfriend, right? Because and luckily there's only been like one or two. Most of my exes, I send much love, right? But like, especially those that were the most arduous and painful have been the very key to opening my understanding of my own painful childhood and trauma and all the things that we all have, right? And so I think that's really important. And from that place, then we can make an adult decision, right? Okay, we can work with this and talk as adults from a place of not blaming, or I can like actually move on because this is absolutely not a good fit for me, and this person is not on an evolutionary journey and I am. And so I think that's really challenging, but sort of a good formula.
For sure. I love that because I think that also goes to the fault where we think, well, if they're not, quote unquote spiritual and like doing all these other things, that they're not willing to evolve. And that's such a distinction. Like, as long as they're willing to do growth work and communication and to talk about things, like that's so spiritual. I've actually had such wildly spiritual conversations with people who, wouldn't even consider the word spirituality like in their vocabulary. And I'm like, wow, they're saying the exact same thing. This is so wild. That was a really changing point for me on my journey.
Mm.
I think that also just like puts us out of our head of like, it's so great. You're so passionate about the Vedas and all this stuff. Like, it's incredible. But like, not everyone is going to find their way with God with this. There's so many different avenues with it. And it's beautiful to kind of open up your perspective of what these relationships could look like. Where do you feel like you are at personally with that, and like starting to commune with others and find that, how do you find, I guess, more like green flags of that evolutionary part in humans?
I heard the word green flags, I think for the first time yesterday or today. So you youngster are going to have to educate me. Green flag is like the things that you see about someone that you do resonate with and find to make you feel loved and seen and safe and your authentic self. Would that be a good way of seeing it?
Correct.
Yeah. So your question to me is, on my journey, am I how am I navigating green flags? I guess say it to me again.
Yeah, so when you are looking for relationships that could just be evolutionary, not necessarily spiritual, because you are a really spiritual person, what are some of those signs that you can look for to know that, okay, this person's like willing to grow and evolve?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. Hmm. You're asking me this question while I'm in the end of my Saturn return. I'm in
Oh, me too.
which stage? I'm Saturn Rahu. Do you know?
Oh, I'm Saturn in Capricorn.
Oh, so well, for the listeners out there, when you're in the depths of Saturn, the mantra of Saturn is delay, delay, delay. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
you know, you're really lucky because you're getting through Saturn quite young, but you're still an adult. I think because of the influence of the planet that I'm under right now, I am solely focused on doing what I can to know who I am and refine my own mind and do my best to not go down pathways of mind or behavior that have proven to be unhelpful, right? And so when I'm with other people, right now I'm not looking for green flags or red flags. I am I am looking to not look for them.
Mm.
I'm not looking for other people to do anything for me right now. And I know that might not be the answer you're expecting,
Oh, that's so good.
but it's been and by the way, everybody, there's a reason why you would have a one-on-one teacher or mentor or guide. Like each person, you may talk to me 5 years from now when I'm in Mercury, which is all about connection and communication. I'm like, yeah, green flags, let's talk. But right now it's like so much of my life has been about wanting connection, that to actually be okay with letting people be exactly as they are and feeling so connected to my own life force has and is like a very healing experience for me. But I'm a lady and I love men and I'm currently single, and like, guys are buzzing about. And one of the things that I will offer as a practical thing for any listeners out there who are dating or, interfacing with people that they're interested in romantically is, do I feel like I can be my real self with this person?
Mm.
And do, one of my early tantra teachers would say, when you're dating somebody and making a decision around being sexual, the question that you can ask is, you're interviewing them for the job of holding your heart.
Mm.
And so, while yes, we need to be yoginis, she who is whole and complete unto herself, totally connected to her life force and the divine, we're also human women and men. And we deserve to be with someone that we feel holds our hearts in a place of respect and softness.
Mm.
And so that's really what I'm looking for, as I'm not really dating much right now, but in the future when I am, like, can they hold my heart?
Mm. Wow. That's such a mic drop moment, truly, because this ties in the conversation perfectly. It's divine feminine is coming back to your true essence, which, we can regard as just connecting back to spirit, but you are not looking for external validation from the other. If you're constantly thinking and looking for that outside of yourselves, you lose the trust within you. And I love that idea of like, wait, how do I feel when I'm with this person? How is that essence expressing itself? And do I feel safe? Do I feel held? That's just makes so much sense with the whole conversation that we've been happening. Like it's truly always comes down to the relationship that you have with yourself. And if that person really helps to match that and just to create this like environment for that to really flourish.
And here's the tricky part. It's easy to talk about this stuff, but when you're in especially new relating, but not always, to be able to discern the difference between this whole thing of safety in our culture is really actually screwing people up.
Mm.
This world isn't meant to be our safe place. Your husband's not meant to be your safe space. In Tantra, you would do all of these extreme tantric solo activities. And then when you were fully advanced spiritual master, your teacher for the last stages of your journey would have you go get married, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, yeah, like go sit on a corpse and get married because it's triggering.
Mm.
And so you can see, where am I still reactive? And
Mm.
so can they hold me and be respectful of me and hold my heart? Yeah, for sure. While at the same time, we have to discern. That's why I didn't use actually the word, does this person make me feel safe? Because how many of us, I'm raising my hand right now, have actually been with someone that maybe was really safe, but all my shit was kicked up and they were just being themselves, just being a normal human, and I felt anxious.
Mm.
So we have to be able to discern, are my feelings around this person related to my past experiences or the reality sitting in front of me now?
Mm.
And the way we get better at that discerning is by taking care of those parts of us that feel scared and lost and alone and insecure and all of that, and refusing to hand them over to anyone else ever again.
Mm.
Then when I'm with someone, I like men in this lifetime. When I'm with a man, I can actually watch the way that past little Katie Silcox felt good and safe around men that weren't good for me.
Mm.
And now I'm around similar energies and I'm like, oh yeah, like that I would have been really drawn to and attracted to and even felt really yummy and warm with.
For
And
sure.
now I'm like, yeah, no. So I think that might be helpful, of like that inner teacher, that inner wise woman that we all have, really takes a practice to get to know her. Otherwise, I'm living in my reactivity and calling it my spiritual self.
Mm. So true. It's almost like that outer shell where it's like, this feels so cozy and comfortable, but why? Is that because it's me, like trauma is my safe zone, like being anxious and that like is become my sub-zero and like, but there's still that like, even if it's weak at the time, there's like this little voice that's like, no, it's not it. Like, you know what? And you're like, but why? Like, I'm feeling really good in this. That's such a good point. It really does just become strengthening trust. And honestly, whenever I get to the core of it, if there ever is a core to anything, and we're diving into like what the fear is, it always comes back to trust in self, trust in
Mm-hmm.
the divine and connection within. I just always find that as a ground zero.
Very wise. Yeah, I love that.
Well, thank you so much for just diving into relationships, picking them apart, peeling them apart, and going all these different ways with it. I just think it's going to be so fruitful for our community. They're, on all ends of the spectrums, in partnerships and relationships, going into spirituality and needing guidance on how to navigate their new relationships, and then, calling in partners and giving such practical and spiritual tools for that is just really healing. And I'm really grateful for your time, as I know it's limited, and I'm just honored to have you here.
Mm. Well, I always enjoy being with you. I think you're just such a young, vibrant, wise woman, and I can't wait to just keep watching you and see what you do. And yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Katie. And do you have anything currently going on? Any way that our community can connect with your magic? I'll have all this linked in the show notes.
Yeah, you can connect with our magic at the shaktischool.com. We have our next school year starting January 2023, and I'm not sure when this will run, but we have early bird ending into this month, September. And yeah, just if anyone's interested in our year-long program, they can reach out to us and set up a coaching call or get all the information on our website.
Perfect. We'll have that in the show notes. Seriously, it's like the most baller group of Ayurvedic practitioners and teachers there. It's just the greatest time. So I'll have that all linked. And thank you again so much for your presence and liveliness
Mhm.
today.
Thank you, lady. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.